Alright, live now. Sorry, guys. Alright, waiting for Tina, then we're going to start sharing this. We're going to get this interview started, so... Yep. Let's get it started tonight. I'm ready. Hey. Alright, drop a comment and then we can go live. Alright, we're live. We'll bring on. Yep.
Hey.
There we go.
We're live.
Yep, go ahead and pin a comment that you want. Like, I let people choose now. So, write whatever comment you want and then go ahead and pin that mug.
Okay.
Get started. You can share it out too before we want to start. I'll give you like a couple minutes. Because that's what I'm about to do right now.
I'm trying to type while not letting this thing fall off the...
Oh, you have it on the stand?
Yeah.
No, it's all good. Take your time. Because I'm going to start sharing and I just put it in the Facebook group. That's what took me so long. I was about to go live in the Facebook group, but you're not in there. It wouldn't have even worked.
Okay. Okay.
Let me see. All right, go to the page.
I'm so many typos.
No, it's all good. You can edit it too, whatever you do. Just put whatever you like. Because it says, the thing that's cool about it too, it automatically tags you. So like once you went live, it says HBCU Startups is live with
Okay.
Christine. So like it does.
I wish I could go live from my page, like our page to your page,
exactly, yes.
Because really, that's where my following is on my page. But
exactly. But yeah, go ahead and share it on there too if you
okay.
want. Like that's what I'm doing. Like I'm just gonna share it to my profile and then I'm gonna share it in the Facebook group. But yeah, like you can't do the business yet. It's done. Yeah.
Okay, I just shared it to my page. I don't think I can. Or I can share it to my business. I'll share it on my desktop, my iPad here, so I don't get us off track.
Alright, cool. Let's go. Let's to the group. There and the group. Alright, whenever you're comfortable, I'm gonna start.
Okay, give me 1 second to log back in.
Share it in some other like Black business groups.
Just pulling the questions back up.
You said what?
Okay, I'm ready. I was pulling the questions on my iPad up.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Let me share it one more. All right, there we go.
Cool.
All right, so start a little bit of introductions for ourselves. So once again, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. My name is Ronell, so I've been doing HBCU startups for going on a year now. In the summer, it'll be a year.
Congrats.
Yep. I'm excited about it. So, like I said, we're doing more of this stuff, documenting you guys' experience, getting to know a little bit more about your business and what you do and how you help other entrepreneurs.
Sure.
Want to provide some more networking opportunities for you all because there's a bunch of people like they don't know that we have different business owners that come from HBCU. So that's important that we highlight and we support one another within our community.
Absolutely.
So yeah, introduction for yourself.
Sure. So my name is Tina Bonner. I am a serial entrepreneur, to say the least. But I definitely say that with passion and with confidence, knowing that I've been an entrepreneur now for 7 years full time. So I've had quite a bit of experience building, starting, growing, scaling businesses. I got my first start as a DJ, professional DJ actually. So that's how I got my real buzz at Howard, and then transitioned there from starting an app development company, and that was in 2012. And so from 2012 and 2013, now fast forward 5 years later, it has been a wild ride, should I say, growing and scaling a startup. But I think the beauty about it is that I've now gained something and learned something. I have a skill set, should I say, that I can take anywhere. So you can drop me in the middle of the desert and I can sell water to a camel. And it's only because I've just put in the blood, sweat, and tears, literally. And by God's grace, I'm here. So I think what I'm doing right now currently is essentially I'm in the tech space. So innovation as it relates to entrepreneurship. There's so many entrepreneurs out here, but really being able to innovate and taking your company and not just be, a t-shirt company or not just be an app startup or not just be, even a brick and mortar business, but how can we really infuse innovation into what you're doing and then at that point make it profitable? So that's what I do, is really help companies think about ways to do that and make it different.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you guys for joining in. Yep, thank you guys for joining in. Tonight's episode 5. Yes, episode 5. We've been dedicated every Sunday. So besides Super Bowl Sunday, but thank you guys for joining in. Go ahead and share so your people. Christina Bonner, she went to Howard. And you got your MBA too, right?
No, I don't have my MBA. No. I got a lot of blood and sweat, but no MBA.
Okay, because I think I saw another school come up for you, or maybe it was someone else.
No. Yeah.
But yeah, Howard alum, so all you Howard people and HBCU startups, this is for you. Like I said, we've been moving into Facebook now, people, for those of you that gave us feedback on Instagram that you guys wanted to join in or you had stuff to do on Sundays and you wanted to come back to it. So we're doing it from Facebook. We'll record it, document this, share this, and then edit and put that on YouTube for you all so you guys can share it out to your folks. So let's dive in. We did our introductions for the night.
Let's do it.
Let's jump on in. First question of the night. How did Howard shape your hustle as an entrepreneur?
Howard is like no place on earth. I can just say that very confidently. Howard shaped my hustle because everybody at Howard has a hustle, whether you're doing, traditional entrepreneurship, whether you're actually just hustling and grinding in your field for class. I mean, everybody is hustling at Howard. And so the one thing that I absolutely love and that Howard shaped me to do is to really have a grit and a grind. I think there's entrepreneurs nowadays, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, are soft, which means that they start something and if they can't make some money within the first 6 months or even first 6 weeks, let alone 6 days, they call it quits and they don't know how to transition or they don't know how to pivot. But Howard is such an interesting complex because it creates a space where it allows you to cultivate your hustle, but it's so much pride attached to it that you won't let yourself not make it because everybody is hustling around each other. And so it's the good part about it is that it forces you, and it forced me to say, okay, everybody out here is doing it. I won't get left behind. Right. But then on the top of that, it's everybody's also watching, and, you've got to make sure it happens. There is no fail. And so that's the beauty about being at Howard, is that it's healthy competition, if I can just keep it real. And so it was a place where, you know, I did have the opportunity to go to a PWI even after that. And to be honest with you, it was like, it was cool, but the competition on the level of hustle, it was like I could be mediocre and still be a lot more hustle, or a lot more grinding a lot more than those around me. And that can cause you to get complacent. But when you're at a place where everybody around you is lions, it causes you to really stay on your A game. So Howard shaped me to always make my A game like second nature. And I think if people can get to that place as entrepreneurs where A game is second nature, oh my gosh, we'll see so much more results. So I can't say Howard's still the same, which was when I was there. But when I was there, I was there in the season of Jay Murphy, and the season of Chase, and so many other people that are just literally legends of Howard. And so we grinded. Shout out to them, by the way.
Awesome. That's what it's about, supporting other people that's out here hustling. We got one main comment.
Website.
What's your website? Yeah, drop your main website.
Sure.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for that question.
What's up, Angela?
Yeah. What's up? All right, so we're gonna jump into the next question. People, go ahead and drop questions. Any things you guys get. We're gonna mix it up. If I feel like it's gonna go with the flow, the questions that I have, I'll go ahead and drop them in, or we'll just wait to the end to get all of you guys' questions answered. All right, so question number 2 of the night. What are the 3 tips you have for people who are building a podcast now? So a lot of people out there, you know, but yeah, what's your take on that? What's your spin?
Yeah, so I think podcast is definitely, I wouldn't say it's saturated yet, but it's definitely something that people are popping up. All things considered, and I would say, I would go into this hoping that you've already niched yourself, right? I'm not even going to use that as one of my 3. Hoping that you've already niched and found a good topic. I wrote some notes. Number 1 is absolutely consistency. And it doesn't have to be consistency on your own timeline, or someone else's timeline. It could just be, you know, I'm going to do it every other week. And so the first part is consistency. But within that, this is my second part to that question, is that being consistent in something that's not a habit can be hard. Right? I said it again, being consistent in something that's not already a habit can be difficult. So one challenge that I was even having for myself, I'll just be transparent, is that I've never done a podcast before. That's something completely new, with even in my, not just how to, but in my routine. Like, I've got to now make space in my routine to be consistent. And so one thing that I found myself doing was, I'm actually, this, you'll get a sneak peek, but my newest podcast, which is dropping this week, is called Artificial Accountability. And so I had to now create artificial accountability in places where I was now requiring other people to be in the space where I would record, because I know I didn't want to let other people down, but I would let myself down, right? So the goal was to now get someone, I would just have my homegirl, hey, I need you to be here with me at 6 o'clock on this day, on this time, and it created accountability for me until it becomes a habit, right? And so at that point, if we leave it up to ourselves, sometimes it doesn't happen. So one is consistency. The second thing is press. Press is really big. Reaching out to people. Now, obviously, it's not something that I have gotten yet, but I understand that in terms of really being able to scale, it takes one article to write about you, one time to really get it to the next level. And even doing things like this, when I say press, I'm talking about traditional press I haven't gotten, but I've been able to do, you know, speaking engagements and different things like that, which have allowed me essentially to talk about the podcast. So spend time on the content, but spend time actually doing and getting press, getting speaking engagements, things where you can acquire more listeners. The third thing is definitely sponsors. Sponsors are awesome. And the reason why I say sponsors, they don't have to be paid. Hear me when I say this. Sponsors don't always have to be paid. And the reason why I say that is because we think when we start a podcast, we can just get people to pay us to sponsor the podcast. But if you take a different perspective, here's what I tell people to start up front is, hey, listen, don't try to get people to pay you. Just ask them to sponsor. What's going to happen in return, they're going to share it with their network.
Yeah.
And so very similar to what's happening right here, right? I think I'm sharing it now with my network because you've asked me to be here. And so for your podcast, every podcast, you should be able to reach out to somebody new and get them to sponsor it, right? They don't have to know that it's not paid. But what happens is that you get them then to share it to their network. So that's huge. So those are the 3 top things. I could talk about niche and this and that, but it's really about being able to do those 3 things in order to scale. Hey, my mom and my brother are in here. What's up, guys?
Hey, that's what it's about, the support. Yep. All right, I like that. Thank you. That's real. And I think that's very key when you're saying, in terms of the sponsorship, it's not always about money. The thing is when you share it out to people, that essentially is money. Like people, your time, you're spending money doing that ways, and you're making more money. So now you touch more people within the HBCU Startups Network who knows what's going to happen. They can screenshot this, they can share it to their community. It could be a potential client for you down the line. Like you never know.
You never know.
Always the best promotion.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep. All right, so yeah, go ahead for the new people that have been joining in. Go ahead, drop any questions you have. You have no sound.
Make sure you turn it up, Mom.
Yeah. But if you guys can't hear us, let us know if any other people can't hear us. But
can you hear us, Angela? Hopefully somebody else can hear.
Yeah, we'll see. But I think, because I can still hear you like perfectly fine.
Okay.
All right. What would you say is the biggest mistake startup founders are committing now? And I kind of want to twist this one a little bit. Okay. What would you, in terms of our community, what would you say is how that is related to the Black community?
Wow. I think one of the ones that jumps out, I had one answer as it related to startups in general, but I think one thing that's almost very obvious, right, within our community is just the ability to create solid partnerships. But I'll say that it's a two-part answer for me, not just create solid partnerships, but our ability to discern what's a partnership and what's just supposed to be working together as contractors. We have this innate ability as people of color to either completely block people off and not want to do it, or we take them all the way and we marry them, right? But can't find a middle ground sometimes. And so I think what happens with startups and scaling, my best work has never been by myself, right? It's always been with partners because we're meant to do life together. I mean, we got Adam and Eve, right? We're meant to do life together. And I think it's no secret that that's just how businesses grow. But with that, we've got to learn how to keep things in perspective. And so I think a bigger part of not being able to scale properly and not being able to create healthy partnerships is that we don't even allow for those test phases. Like everything is not meant to be married to the person in terms of like, y'all now 50-50 and we splitting this. Everything doesn't have to be all or nothing. And I think as people of color, we've not seen business, just to be honest, we haven't seen business done a lot. We've only seen the outsides of business, but we don't know what contracts look like. We don't know that there's joint partnerships, there's joint ventures, there's contracting, there's different types of partnerships that allow all of us to get our goal met without necessarily saying, oh, we're going to be married and this is half your business and half my business. And so I think one thing that I'm passionate about is really teaching the fundamentals of business and helping our people really understand the different types, because you just don't know what you don't know. And if nobody's teaching you how to do business, the only way you'll think that partnership can be done is if you're 50-50 and I'm 50-50. And that may not work best for the way that we scale our business. So I think one thing that startups do is specifically as it relates to us, to answer your question, is we don't properly put partnerships and things like that into perspective, or properly put deals into perspective, and unfortunately they end up flopping.
Whoa, you said it. You said that right there. That's real. That's a lot of things too. Like I hear a lot of people, we get a lot of things like, I need marketing dollars. We want to do a partnership with you guys, this and that. But it's like, we're still growing. We haven't necessarily even found every single like startup that's in the HBCU community. There's some businesses that aren't even startups.
Yeah.
So like, sometimes like people like send that like rather it be a DM, an email, and they have these questions, but it's like you gotta let sometimes something fully operate. So that I appreciate you telling people about that, about contracts, about business, because if you're still growing yourself, why would you try to limit yourself in certain contracts and aspects to already
Yeah.
put yourself in binding issues? So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Go ahead and drop questions. I see there's been people jumping in and out. I don't know if you guys sharing, but thank you guys for joining in. And if you have any questions,
thanks. If you have questions, feel free to drop them in.
Yeah, drop them in here. I think I saw one. Oh, here goes one. I'll get to that one after this. After question 4 that ties in. How do you plan to create impact in 2018 through your ventures?
Great question. So as it relates to my venture specifically, I think I kind of touched on it with question 3. My passion, I have my own businesses, and those don't really intersect with what I do on the forefront, but I do have a bunch of ventures and things like that. But how I really plan on making an impact is really, again, teaching business. And I have a series coming out called The Science of Business, and I'm super excited about it because I'm not talking about branding. I'm not talking about marketing. I'm not talking about, hacks to be able to design better. I'm talking about the fundamentals of business. I started my business in 2012. And so Instagram came out 2011. I didn't have the pleasure of social media. I didn't have the pleasure of Instagram ads and Facebook ads. I literally didn't have any of that. I was blessed to use email marketing and things like that. But for the most part, the internet, like in terms of the way people scale now, was absolutely unheard of. So I had to cultivate traditional business strategies in terms of business development. What does it look like to go out and get partnerships? What does it look like to pick up the phone and call a company that you've never talked to ever and make a cold call and ask for who the person is that cuts the checks, right? And try to have a conversation with them. What does it look like to send a pitch email or to stop somebody on the side of the street because they look like they might be your target market, and really try to have a conversation with them, and see if something there. What does it look like to go to networking events and really network, right? So
right, exactly.
I had to do all of those things. And so not just that, but then on the second half, once you get that, how do you negotiate? What is it like creating a proposal? How do you create, a proposal? I remember creating my first $10,000 proposal. How do you do that? What are the components of that? How do you even make yourself legally? I've been sued before, so I never wanted to do that again. How do you make yourself legally binded by the state, but it's make sure that the person can't sue you? I mean, I've been through so much that my burden now is to watch other entrepreneurs who have incredible business ideas, but nobody's teaching them how to sell. They're just selling stuff to them. Nobody's teaching them how to negotiate. Nobody's teaching them this. So as you can see, I get passionate about it. But that's my heart. Is really this year is to make an impact on other entrepreneurs and how they do business. It really helped see them some results. Again, I've been blessed to do some really big things, and not have to go to a job in the last 7 years. And it's only because of the things that I'm going to be sharing in the science of business. So I've changed the date slightly. I was going to do it in February. And of course, you guys are getting a lot of first tonight, but I'll share with you first. And I'm going to be doing it and saving it into the latter half of the year, because it's so important that I nail this and that I've got everything right, because the people that attach to this and the people who actually take the time to learn the information, I mean, their lives are going to change almost instantly once they implement this stuff, but I've got to have it perfect. So the Science of Business, you can check that out. That will be my most impactful, essentially business, should I say, on the forefront this year for sure. Kim, what's
Awesome.
up? Carlise, hey.
Awesome. All right, so that ties in kind of what Angela was saying, which is my mom. Hey, mom. But she goes, how are you funding your business right now?
So I have a couple different ways. I have multiple, as I mentioned, I'm a serial entrepreneur. So I have multiple ventures. Each venture requires a different level of capital. Each venture requires a different type of raising capital. And so it depends on which one I'm in. I know one particular, especially as it relates to startups, since we're talking about startups here, I've actually raised capital. And so from that's it's so many different ways you can do that, from relationships to actually doing a family and friends round, which is one thing that I've done before. I mean, I've dipped and dabbed into so much stuff. So my follow-up question would be what industry you're in, because that's really going to be dependent on how the best way to go about getting capital is.
Thank you. Sounds good. So we're gonna head into the last question of the night. People, drop questions. And Mama, you respond back.
Listen, drop questions. It's a nice penny to talk to me for an hour. So you get to do it for free tonight. So if you got questions, definitely drop them. I would love to be able to share with you.
All right. So for question number 5, how should entrepreneurs measure their success financially and socially? Do you have any quick tools? I know you've already been dropping some tools right now. And right now.
Yeah. So I'm full of tools, my goodness. I feel like I talk about software all day long. But here's what I'll say. I think before we can get into tangibles as far as tools, it's important to understand the mechanics behind the tool, right? Because I can teach you about the tool, but if you don't understand how it works or why it's applicable to you, it really doesn't matter. But one thing that we actually implement within our company and with our clients are things called KPIs, key performance indicators. KPI, and you can Google it and look it up. I mean, it's just a term that everybody pretty much uses in business, but that's one way, both financially, I think even socially, in anything. It could be in your life, how much water you drink. I mean, what's a key performance indicator of how much water you drink? Is your tongue dry at 12 o'clock? Like, that's an indicator if you drink enough water. So I think what's important is not so much what the tool is, but the mechanics behind it. But understanding that KPIs can really help on your journey identify where you are and help you see, do I need to pivot? Do I need to stay where I'm at? Do I need to actually, transition or bring somebody on to help me? And so even as it relates financially, and I wrote some notes down here, one thing financially is to know that if you are actually not a financier, and when I say that, if that's not your thing financially, you should not be the one creating KPIs, because we'll think that just because we are getting a lot of money, if you don't understand gross versus net, you'll think that because you've grossed a lot of money, that you've made a lot of money, but you really haven't netted anything. So really you're back at zero, right? So it's that you've got to.
Hello? I can't. Can you guys hear her? She froze, yeah. She jumps back in. I'm going to text her now. Maybe it's a bad signal or someone tried to call. Yeah, maybe someone tried to call her. All right, give me a second, people. I'm going to text her. It was getting good, too. Ooh. Give me a second. I gotta wait to see when she gets back on. All right, give me a second, you guys. I'm gonna text her. All right, she's back.
Hey, I'm back.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Or sometimes when someone texts or calls, sometimes it messes up too. Okay. I don't know.
I totally lost my train of thought, but I think
that was good too. Yeah.
I think what I was saying essentially is that if especially when it comes to financially, us knowing, not being ignorant to who's, obviously this is for HBCU startups and people of color, sometimes that financially that can be a place that we haven't naturally had as much education on. And so those who are very much educated in that space, knowing that may be a weaker point, I try my best to let other people who are more financially savvy get into that place for me. My business partner actually is a financial advisor for Bank of America, like my business partner. So I understand the components of that. That may be something that's weaker for me, and that is such an important indicator and such an important component in order to be able to sustain. And so when it comes to KPIs, that's the general idea, but how to do it, how to set it, what should be your KPIs, consult somebody who's really into finances. Figure out, hey, from a financial perspective, what's most important that I start tracking? And that way you can actually create, spaces that you're identifying and going back and revisiting that matter most. So that's what I would say as it relates to that, for sure. Oh, and the other one was socially, right? KPI socially, again, same deal. Like, I'm not a social media manager. I don't understand as far as, like, I could never look at a calendar and, like, know when the best to put it out. I've never understood how to calculate when the best to put something out, because honestly, they're changing stuff all the time. But there's somebody out there who enjoys doing all of that stuff. And so your goal as a true entrepreneur, as a true startup, is not to get caught up and tangled into the details of when is the best time to post on social media. When is the best time? What is my key performance indicator for my finances? I don't care. That's not my job. My job is to see vision. My job is to figure out how can we scale this company? How can we be as most innovative as possible? That's what matters as a true entrepreneur. And if that's not resonating with you in this moment, you're probably not a true entrepreneur. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. And so the goal, though, is to be able to help people who are just starting up and getting there. Because if you can focus on the product, focus on the business and building the business, I mean, my goodness, all those other places at that point can be filled in. So KPIs are definitely something that you wanted to pay attention to, but don't get caught up in the details. Don't drown in the details. Understand it at high level and then outsource it to somebody who actually can do it.
Boom, you said it. All right, let's read some of these questions people drop. All right, we got one from Elliot Short. Thank you for dropping a question. How have you integrated social media into branding your business?
Yeah, so I have a few different businesses. I have my personal brand, and I've got like 5 ventures that I work with outside, and some of them you'll probably never even know that I'm involved in. But how I brand in social media is just all about, it's 2 parts, right? You've got to know what's next. You've got to know what's coming next, whether it be, and again, this is my personal opinion as it relates to like figuring out algorithms and all that stuff. I try to stay away from that stuff. But as far as the vision of the brand, that's what you always got to figure out what's next. You've got to be ahead of your own self and knowing what's next. So even as it relates to your company, you've got to know what is next. What are the new types of content that we can start creating? What are the new types of things that people like? Doesn't mean that you have to go create it, but you got to know what's next. And so my approach to social media is always being on the cutting edge of next. So that means that like there was a time before memes and quotes and all that stuff came out, there was somebody who was doing it and it was like hot. Now it's like if you have a page full of quotes, we're like, okay, we're over it, right? But somebody before it was next, and you got to get ahead of next, right? Now everybody's doing the thing where they've got the video in the between, then they got like the words up at the top. It's cool, but I guarantee you by the time the summer break, there's going to be a next. And so the idea is not to get bogged down into the details, but just you as the entrepreneur, as the visionary, what's next? What can I look at? What can I do differently? And then brand accordingly. And then by doing that, you'll always attract people because they can tell, they can smell that you're fresh. They can tell that you're innovative, and they'll want to work with you.
Right, you said it. That's good right there. All right, next question. Alexis Small. What's up, Alexis? You may have addressed this already, but did you work in corporate America? If so, how did you transition into entrepreneurship?
So, believe it or not, I've never had a job. I don't know what that's like. I actually transitioned straight from undergrad, and the very next day I was like working for myself. I've had many nights, my goodness, probably more than I can count on my hands and my toes of trying to go back. I remember even trying to take a job and have gone through the whole interview process. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to do it. But I've never had a job. honestly cannot answer that question as far as how to properly transition. But what I can tell you is you have to be led. You have to be led and you have to be wise. And the reason why I say led is because if you feel like it's the right time to go, because there's windows for everything. There's opportunity and opportunity windows for everything. And the feeling that you feel, it doesn't mean it's always going to be there. And so you never want to miss out on that. And so potential spoils. Potential has an expiration date. And so if you feel like it's time to go, like everything that you do doesn't always have to make sense. But if you feel like it's time to go and you're wise about it, you have a reserve, you've got money stored up, you've got a place where you can pull from, and you know you've already tested your concept, go. Especially if you feel like God is really leading you to go. Go. Don't miss the move, because you may not always feel that way.
May not always feel that way. Ain't that the truth? All right, people. Last question, unless you got some more.
Any more questions?
All right, 2 more questions left. Oh, you kind of already touched us about this one. And Anderson says, how do you feel about businesses using crowdfunding to raise money? You kind of talking about family and friends.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think crowdfunding is a great source. I mean, any way you can raise money, do it. I mean, it's to me, it's I think any way to gain funds and capital, do it. So I think crowdsourcing is a great way. Absolutely. I think this is things like Kickstarter and Indiegogo and a bunch of different other ones that you can use. But yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely, if I had a physical product, I would absolutely do a crowdfunding.
Awesome. Another question from Alexis. How did you set your prices for your business?
Great question. So here's how I did. I actually did a reverse. So for one of my businesses, actually consulting and development company. So we do, website development. We do mobile app development for more medium to high end clients as far as business size. And so what I did, I actually had my prices set wrong because I had my prices set for who I thought would buy versus who was actually buying. And so it took me doing an analysis, and I remember redoing my entire website. And it was like this orange and bright yellow. It was like all these great colors. And I realized that, oh my gosh, this looks like a website that a millennial would like go to and love to work with. And then I had to look back through my clientele. Every single one of my clientele, with the exception of 4, are actually baby boomers. The Generation X, I think the generation after us, after millennials, I think that's the baby boomers or Generation X, whatever it is. But it's that 35 to 45 range. And I'm like, they're not going to look at this website and take me serious. And so I had to redo my branding. And then from there, I redid a price analysis looking at what is the median that they would pay. Because here's the thing. There's a research already done for you. But the beauty of Google is that people have already done all the research for you. So I'm Googling and researching, what are people willing to pay that are in this age bracket, that are this demographic, they have these needs. And then even taking a step further, that are enterprise, what is government contracting, like knowing that those are some of my clients too, and people in that space, or what is that? And so by doing research and looking at who's already buying, it allowed me to set my prices appropriately. And you always you've got this middle ground between it being a reach for your customers and them being able to afford it. Because you never want to get to a place where like every single time you put out a number, nobody's biting. Then it's like, okay, this may not be the right price point, but you do want to be at a place where you're not setting too low, where you're overworking yourself and you're not able to pay yourself or pay. So there's that middle ground between that. So to me, it takes 2 things: research, actually looking at what are other companies charging, and or what is the comfortable median that this age group is willing to pay, and then actually testing it out. What is the response? Listen to people. Like, are they jumping at that price? Are they saying, oh, that's nothing, let me cut the check? Are they not? Like, really listening, and it takes us process to refine. But that's how I was able to do it.
Awesome. That research is important. People ask that all the time. Just type in your target market, and also for people that are influencers on social, like people DM and they send you the price on what they're posting. Like people ask me like, hey, how much should I charge for a post to run an advertisement for their business? And I'm like, have you ever DM people that are on social doing the same thing as you? Like, so that's the best way to go about it. Okay, here goes another question. from Kimberly Gallo. Tina, how do you know when it's time to remove services from a business? You can use me as an example from our brand strategy session in ATL.
Yeah, wow. So it's so interesting. Kim is awesome, and she's an entrepreneur as well. Definitely recommend checking her out and following her. But I would say that it's so interesting because I just talked about this in my podcast. The very first podcast I did, I was so excited about it because we get to this place where we do things out of habit. We do things because it sounds good. We do things just because. But it has to be two parts to why you offer something. One, it has to make money, right? Number one. I think the other thing is that you have to make sure that you are doing something that is, I wouldn't even call it fulfilling you, but that makes sense with what your current assets are in terms of what you can provide and what you can give. And there's a portion of it that does make you happy too. And so I remember our conversation with Kim and really telling her, like, there's things that you're doing right now that just don't make sense for either where you are and where you want to go. And so you've got to figure out, like, one, does this make sense for the long term of where I want to go? And if it doesn't, you've got to remove that service off your plate. And that's what happens to me. I realized that for the longer term vision of where I want to go, where I know my company is supposed to be, I've got to remove some stuff off of the plate. Because you really only need 3 things on your plate. It's levels to it. You don't have to have a laundry list of services. Clients actually don't really know what they need. They just want you to prescribe them something anyway, right? So it's the point where you've got to realize that, like, does this make sense? Do I have the assets and the resources to provide this? And for the long-term vision, is this price, does it even make sense for where I want to go? So if you get a chance to check out the podcast, anybody that's listening, check out the podcast because it'll even give you more language to that, because you cannot take time and waste time doing stuff that just doesn't make sense and removing services. Another trick that I think even Kim is talking about is figuring out what are most of your clients paying for right now. And you'll be surprised if you look back at it, you'll realize that 80% of your clients are only paying for 20% of your services. 80% of your clients are paying for 20% of your services. So the other 80% or the other 80% of services that you have available, take them away. Nobody's buying them. That way you can really, really focus on the 20% of services that you're providing that people actually want, actually need. So that's the 80-20 rule. I think that's the one specifically that Kim was sharing or bringing up. But 80% of your clients are only buying 20% of your services. Figure out what those are and nix the rest.
Boom, boom, boom. That's the truth. I just experienced that myself. Ooh. People advertise. I'm like, okay, I can keep doing ads on businesses. And they're like, but I'm like, no. And then I realized, like, hey, like, people want to be empowered. So
yeah,
start doing different ways to raise money to help people build their own following for their business. And it's helping so much. We're getting way more people that want to grow on social and things of that nature for their startups. So
sure.
That's real. And can you go ahead, Tina, and drop your podcast in here too for those people? Like, the podcast is real. I got you on my Apple Podcast. So
yeah, I'll drop it in. I'll just it's really easy. You can just go to iTunes and or SoundCloud, and then you can just search Tina Bonner Live. So very simple. This podcast is really meant to give practical things, the day-to-day things that I really come up with that literally change the trajectory of my life. So it's not really a lot of, marketing strategies, business strategies. These are really like concepts that I apply to my life that just, literally change everything. So.
Yep, that's real. All right, we're approaching our hour, peoples. You got stuff to do. It's Monday. It's back to the grind. So if you don't have any questions, we're going to close out soon. Great questions tonight, people. I appreciate everyone that dropped a question and provided insight and shared this out. I just looked at Facebook on my laptop and I see some people have been sharing it out, so I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
All right. Any more questions? If not, that's it.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate you greatly. It's always an honor to be able to share. So thank you. I'm just thankful to God to have another day to share this. So, thank you, sir.
Yep, the journey is important to document. So I'm going to get this up on YouTube and stuff for you people.
Okay.
Check it out. HBCU Startups. We're on there on YouTube, so you guys can share it out on YouTube. It should be up there within the next day.
Absolutely.
So that'll be the next.
I want to say one more thing before you guys head out. Listen, if you need some information in terms of really wanting to learn how to scale, look out this year. Coming later this year, the science of business, I'm telling you, is going to change your life. If nobody's ever taught you how to negotiate, nobody's ever taught you how to create a contract, create a proposal, if you don't even know what a $10,000 or 5-figure contract looks like, we're going to get to the nitty gritty and really be able to talk about things that move business, so that way you can get dropped in the middle of the desert and know how to sell water to a camel and survive. So I'm excited about that. It's coming again, the science of business. More immediately check out the podcast. And if you got any questions, I'm so not untouchable. Reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, everything. All my handles are at Sincerely Tina B. But yeah, just wanted to make sure that you guys got that.
Yep. I just dropped that for them too. That's what I was doing.
Cool.
So yeah, go ahead, follow her on Instagram, people. Great research, been very professional the whole time. Great business, and thank you again. So it was a great night tonight. I think it's gonna touch a lot of people because you got to the nitty gritty, especially those KPIs. That's key.
That's it. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you. Blessings to you. I pray that you have many more shows and seasons. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
Right back at you, and I'll follow up with you after this.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, people. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.